1991. There's a high chance you haven't seen this film, because it's not available on DVD unless you live in Germany or France. Although back in 2013 there were reports that Soderbergh was making a midnight edition. Hopefully we don't have to wait too long for a Blu-ray release. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about Franz Kafka or his writings, because I don't. I mean, I've read Before the Law, I've seen Orson Welles' The Trial, but that's the extent of it. But there are references that I am aware of, like in The Penal Colony.
The needles inscribing the judgment into the flesh of the condemned man. It's new.
And The Metamorphosis.
What are you working on?
Oh, a thing about a man who wakes up to find himself transformed into a giant insect.
There's also a character called Grubark, which is a name in The Trial. There's also a reference very late in the film where Kafka asks that his work be destroyed when he died.
If I don't see you later, would you go to my house, find my notebooks, and destroy them? All of my manuscripts. They're none of them finished. Just burn them.
There are also references to German Expressionism. Here you see a poster for the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. There's a character called Dr. Murnau, referencing F.W. Murnau, who directed films like Nosferatu, Faust, and Sunrise. There's also a file called Orlak, which is a reference to Nosferatu. It's hard for me to really talk about this film because it's essentially a mystery story, but I can talk about the technicalities behind certain scenes. The script is by Lem Dobbs, who would work with Soderbergh again on two much more lower budget films. Walt Lloyd returns to photograph for the second and final time. The production design is by GAVIN, who you might remember from some films you want to forget. And his design seemed to take the center stage, with sets like this which showcase the endless hall of records. And according to the end credits, this is the first time that a Soderbergh film has been re-recorded in a Swell-Tone theater, which would be the same place for the rest of Soderbergh's filmography. Cliff Martinez returns to score, and he gives the music a very European feel. Soderbergh himself returns to edit, and you can tell that he is continuing to experiment. For example, here he is cross-cutting. The film was budgeted around $11 million, which is about $10 million more than what Sex, Lies and Videotape cost. And to the film's credit, it does lead to some very striking images. Some examples include scenes like this, which involves a matte painting or green screen, I don't really know which is then followed by this God's Eye view. And I think this image speaks for itself to show how bloated this film got. There are at least some images that are done more subtly, like this shot, which comes at a time where Kafka distrusts the police. Kafka is also notable for being Soderbergh's first experimentation with colour. The film was shot in black and white, which helps gives it a very noir feel. But all the scenes shot in the castle were done in colour. This scenario is foreshadowed much earlier in the film.
Kafka, I understand you fancy yourself as a writer.
In a small way.
You should find a more athletic hobby. Put some color in your cheeks.
Do you get it? That's David Jensen as the Laughing Man, who was the electrician in Sex, Lies and Videotape. He will also reappear in future Soderbergh films. We are introduced to Kafka at the end of this tracking shot.
Do you remember many years ago, Father took me aside and he told me that I was preoccupied with the insignificant. Morbidly preoccupied, in his opinion. Well, for years now, I've led a life that even he must call normal.
This shot not only showcases the environment of where he works, but also the tediousness of what he does.
It may be a disappointment to him, but I ask, is it a crime?
In the early work of Soderbergh's filmography, he would employ a lot of Dutch angles. They're featured more regularly here, which works because it helps give the film a sense of mystery. There are two twin characters named Oscar and Ludwig, who act in a very vaudevillian kind of way. Their character traits are very similar to the LLOYD twins in the Ocean's trilogy. And that's pretty much all I can talk about on the technical side of things. Kafka was not well received by critics or audiences, and while the story does have some interesting ideas, it doesn't really add up to much. I'm not exactly sure what the ending represents. Life seems to go on as normal. Kafka now has competent twin assistants. He sees Anna and Bizzleback hitting it off, and he will eventually die of tuberculosis. Does this imply that it was all in Kafka's head, or was it part of a book he was trying to write? I don't know. Kafka marked the start of Soderbergh's downfall in his early career, but his next film will see him get up again. If only for a short time.